Disrespected at check-in, hidden truth of the black woman's incredible transformation revealed. Maya stared at the immaculate marble floor, each crack and reflection magnifying her invisible presence in the law firm. Today was like every other day, filled with answering phones and managing schedules. Yet this morning held an air of tension, as a high-profile client in a tailored suit swept through the lobby, a sense of superiority trailing behind him. He barely glanced her way before dismissively remarking, "Make sure you have someone competent in charge of these low-level check-ins." The sharp sting of the dismissal hit her gut, igniting a fury that had long been suppressed. It was as if a dam had cracked, unleashing a flood of emotions: anger, humiliation, a deep yearning for acknowledgement. Memories of her grandmother surged through her like a whirlpool, the unapologetic civil rights attorney who had fought tirelessly against injustices. What would she say, Maya thought, recalling the stories of resilience her grandmother shared over family dinners. The classroom had never felt far, and yet here she was, chained to a front desk, invisible beneath a coat of indifference. That urge to fight, once buried, now bubbled up inside her. But as she struggled with this newfound intensity, a nagging fear wormed its way into her mind. What if she failed? The box of expectations of her upbringing clashed with the desires she tried to cultivate. Could she dare to assert herself in a place where her talents were overlooked? The thrashed against her brain, keeping her awake at night, whether she sank into her pillows or waded through her law books. Her heart raced with the risk of challenging the status quo, the loyalty to the firm rivaling her moral compass. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. But was she just a burden? Each day she felt the weight of those assumptions. A few more weeks passed in suffocating silence until an impending disaster loomed. A critical oversight attributed to the firm was about to unfold, threatening everything in its path. Suddenly, her once easy decision crystallized. Should she rise up, risking her job for the sake of justice, or slip back into the comforting shadows, letting the moment pass? There, in the recesses of her heart, unease took root and spread like wildfire.
A noise outside jolted her from spiraling thoughts, triggering a memory. A hidden box in her grandmother's belongings, filled with legal documents she'd never explored. What if it held answers? Her hand trembled as she envisioned uncovering tales of battles fought and won against the very prejudices she now faced. The idea ignited something deep within, a burning desire to not only reclaim her dignity, but empower others to stand with her. Yet doubt pulled at her like a taut string, threatening to snap under pressure. This was her moment to act, but would she have the courage to challenge everything she had known? With days ticking away, that unease morphed into desperation. Maya had to choose, accept the dismissals, or rise with unyielding resolve. It was time to discover what kind of legacy she was truly capable of creating. The air felt thick with unvoiced decisions and consequences yet to unfold. Maya awoke the next morning, the sunlight filtering through the sheer curtain, illuminating the scattered books on her desk. She felt more alive, each pulse quickening her realization that change was inevitable. It was time to confront the lid she'd kept on her potential and aspirations. The fear that had once gripped her now harbored urgency, sparking a determination to investigate her grandmother's hidden box. After work, she hurried home, her heart racing in anticipation. The box sat untouched, a relic waiting to be unearthed. Dust enveloped it like the secrets it contained, and as she pried it open, the musty smell of aged paper filled her nostrils. Inside lay a treasure trove of case files, letters, and documents peppered with her grandmother's annotations, each scribble igniting a new fire of inspiration in Maya's heart. What if understanding her grandmother's battles could guide her own? Each case summarized within the manuscripts spoke not only of legal battles, but also of morality, fortitude, and cultural identity. She started to piece together the stories, cases that challenged racial injustices head-on, times her grandmother faced down powerful attorneys. A hasty retreat into safety almost felt seductive. But among the stories of victory, fragments of her own identity began to crystallize. She had the same spark within her. She could harness it. The days that followed were filled with a mix of fear and exhilaration.
She started taking notes, gathering not just her thoughts, but strategies for addressing the impending crisis looming over their firm.
If she could speak up amidst the storm brewing over the impending disaster, it might just propel her from obscurity into action. In meetings, she began making calculated suggestions, inspired in part by her grandmother's work. Each proposal received mixed reactions. Sometimes it was met with eye rolls, other times it ignited a conversation. But it was enough. With every voice strained in disbelief or curiosity, Maya found confidence radiating within her. Each attempt became an incremental step toward her own validation, the history repeating itself, but this time her own name would echo alongside her grandmother's. One afternoon, while preparing for a tense meeting with partners, a sudden thought dawned on her. She was more than an employee. She was a bearer of legacy. The gravity of this awareness anchored her resolve. Remaining in the shadows wasn't an option. She was ready to fight for both herself and the values her family had instilled in her. Steeling her mind for the moment of truth, she pondered how to present her evidence of the oversight, the catalyst that could change everything. The stakes demanded a bold confrontation, and she could feel the momentum building. Without realizing, the clock sped toward the impending meeting. It was now or never. Would she take the leap, confront the powers at play, and demand acknowledgement? Her heart pounded as she mentally rehearsed her lines. In that instant of waiting, she knew this was the moment she had been preparing for all along. Just as she took a deep breath and opened the door to the conference room, a sudden voice rang out behind her, sending a shockwave of uncertainty through her. "What are you doing, Maya?" The weight of the firm's hierarchy loomed above her, and she turned to face the source of the voice, her stomach dropping, but her resolve hardening. The confrontation was about to commence, and she stood on the precipice of becoming everything she dreamed of.
Each face wore its own mask, curiosity, disdain, confusion, and with each flicker of their gazes, Maya felt a ripple of validation. He could undermine her, but she was determined not to be dismissed. "What exactly do you think you can add here?" he scoffed, his condescension palpable. Maya breathed deeply, channeling the strength of every woman who had been overlooked before her. "The numbers don't lie. We've overlooked critical data that could change the course of this case. I've compiled the evidence, and I believe it will not only substantiate our position, but also safeguard our reputation." Crickets sounded off as her words hung in the air. Silence, thick and suffocating, enveloped the room. Maya flicked her gaze to the documents clasped tightly in her hands. It was time to embody her grandmother's bravery. The notion of retreating felt more distant than it ever had. She noticed the open box of case files at the back of the room, the very ones that had fueled her awakening, and a rush of conviction surged through her. While I understand the precedence of experience, this project presents an opportunity to reevaluate our approach. If we ignore the emerging trends or fail to critically examine the data, trends shown clearly in the archives I reviewed, we risk more than just losing this case. We risk our integrity. The atmosphere shifted as murmurs broke out. Roger stood momentarily mute, unbalancing as authority, while the other partners leaned closer, intrigued. Was she breaking through? Did she see a crack in the wall built around their entrenched biases? Her heart pounded with urgency, the tide of apprehension giving way to a newfound clarity and purpose. "I urge you to allow me to present my findings. We have always aimed for excellence, and sticking rigidly to tradition isn't a path to innovation. We owe it to our clients and ourselves to explore every avenue." Suddenly, a voice from the back interrupted. "Very well, let's see what you've got, Maya." It was Clara, an associate Maya had collaborated with recently. The support surged her confidence. Maya took a deep breath, executing the presentation she had mentally rehearsed. Each slide transitioned fluidly, her nerves morphing into assertiveness with every statistic, every graph that emphasized overlooked details. The room began to feel warmer. The eyes that had once shot daggers began to soften, weaving threads of curiosity and engagement. As she finished her presentation, the room erupted into discussion. Ideas clashed and merged, and the partners leaned in, their previous barriers slowly breaking down. It was exhilarating. This was not the response she had anticipated, but the gravity of the moment demanded she remain grounded. But there was still Roger, fuming but strategically regrouping, now dissecting her thoroughness. "Easier said than done, Maya. Are you prepared to own accountability for any potential fallout?" The question hit like a physical blow.
Accountability, such a weighty word, one with consequences that loomed larger than she anticipated.
yet it echoed the journey she had been on since unearthing her grandmother's legacy. "Absolutely," she answered, her voice unwavering. "Without risk, there's no reward. Let's redefine our narrative, together." The tension in the room shifted again, and for the first time Maya perceived respect glimmering in their eyes. She had breached the initial walls of skepticism, but the fight was far from over. When the meeting adjourned, a ripple of exhilaration coursed through her. She hadn't only confronted Roger, but had initiated a latent change within the firm's dynamics. With opportunities slowly appearing on the horizon, she realized the real risk lay in what facing the aftermath of such confrontation might bring. As she gathered her things, Clara leaned closer, a knowing smile crossing her face. "What's next for you, Maya? Ready to take that leap further?" The question lingered, and with it Maya felt the weight of her decisions coalesce into something larger than she had anticipated. The abyss of accountability loomed, offering no clear answers. The fight had transformed into a battlefield, both for professional credibility and personal identity. Maya walked out of the room, heart racing. Paths diverged ahead, and with every step a calculation formed. What else would she risk to validate not only her competence, but the legacy of those who had honed her spirit? Just then, a message dinged on her phone, pulling her from her thoughts. An invitation to join a panel discussion for women in leadership roles, a platform to inspire and ignite voices like her own. "Maya, you need to be a part of this," her inner voice urged. But was she ready to step fully into that light, knowing all that it might expose? Her heart raced again, that vital, thrilling sensation making her pulse quicken anew. The next steps could define the course of her career. Would she allow fear to anchor her, or courage to propel her forward? With each step towards the exit, the next chapter of her journey unfurled like a cascade of uncharted waters, drawing her deeper into the conversation she'd been destined to initiate. Maya left the conference room, the echo of her own voice still reverberating in her ears. The confrontation with Roger had ignited a spark she hadn't fully recognized. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was standing on a threshold. How she stepped through it would determine not only her professional trajectory, but also her sense of self-worth. The palpable weight of potential accountability pressed down on her. She could feel the tide of change stirring, but with it came a labyrinth of uncertainty. The invitation to speak on the panel was tempting, yet daunting. What if she failed to articulate her thoughts as fluently as she had in the meeting? Doubt clawed at her insides, gnawing at her resolve. As she crossed the lobby, she spotted Clara chatting with another associate. The enthusiasm in Clara's voice was infectious, causing Maya's heart to flutter with a sense of camaraderie. It felt vital to connect, to strengthen the bond they had begun to forge. "Clara, wait," she called out, her voice cutting through the chatter. "Maya!" Clara turned, her warm smile illuminating the dimly lit lobby. "You've got everyone buzzing. That was quite the presentation. You really held your ground." Maya chuckled nervously. "Thanks. I didn't expect such a reaction, especially from Roger. Do you think I made a mistake?" Clara shook her head vehemently. "Not at all. You took a risk, and that's what counts. In this field, your voice matters, and you just proved that." Maya admired Clara's confidence, but self-doubt lingered. "I just worry about what might happen next. If they don't agree with my findings, what if it leads to blame?" "Then you deal with it as it comes. Remember, accountability can be a strength. Look at how you stood your ground today," Clara said, her tone firm. Maya felt a flicker of determination rise again, ignited by Clara's encouragement. "You're right. Maybe this is my chance to really push the envelope here." The conversation broadened, bouncing ideas off each other about the upcoming panel. As they discussed potential topics, Maya realized that this new role could serve not only her aspirations, but also represent the voices that had been buried, voices like her grandmother's. Yet, as the excitement built, another thought crept in. Wasn't she still that girl who feared stepping outside the shadow? Perhaps not, but the ghosts of her past hung close. The idea of a public platform stirred a sense of vulnerability in her. How would she be received? Would she face the same skepticism she had in the boardroom, but amplified? That evening, seated across a cluttered desk encumbered by case files, she stared at the panel invitation once more. The website highlighted women leaders, many seasoned and highly regarded. Imposter syndrome clawed at her confidence. Am I ready? Maya penned a list of points she aimed to articulate on the panel. Each word flowed like water, and with every line her confidence began to swell. Her grandmother's voice whispered affirmations in her mind, urging her to remember the struggles of their history, the legacy of resilience that coursed through her veins. After hours of fine-tuning her notes, she felt a mixture of thrill and terror.
The transformation within herself was tangible. She stood at the intersection of doubt and courage, but she knew she needed to take that step. Yet she also recognized the importance of preparation. She had to own her narrative, just as she had done that day in the boardroom. The next morning, as she sipped her coffee, an unexpected ping on her phone disrupted her thoughts. A message from Roger, asking to meet and discuss the findings from yesterday. Her stomach twisted in knots.
Was this a chance for a further confrontation, or a step toward collaboration? The gravity of the situation weighed heavily on her. This could redefine her career at the firm, but it could also open old wounds of insecurity. Maya took a deep breath. What would she say? Who would she be at that meeting? The stakes were rising, but as uncertainty loomed, a glimmer of possibility sparked within her. The battle with herself continued, yet she understood that every struggle was another step toward her evolution. With resolve hardening within her, she accepted the invitation to chat with Roger, the enormity of her journey echoing in her chest. How would she confront him? And more importantly, how would she confront her own patterns of doubt? As she prepared to leave, the door to her transformation creaked wider. She was ready to redefine her path, her voice, her legacy, her story. In the silence of that moment, she pondered the words that no longer felt alien, resonating loudly in her mind. The time had come to face not just the doubts of others, but her own. Maya stepped into the sleek office of Roger, her heart pounding with a mixture of anticipation and trepidation. The room, filled with contemporary art pieces and minimalist furnishings, felt almost sterile. It was a world she aspired to be more part of, a stark contrast to the tumultuous emotions swirling within her. Taking a deep breath, she gathered her thoughts. This was her moment to showcase not just her findings, but also her commitment to standing her ground, despite the shadows of self-doubt that danced just out of view. She had spent the morning rehearsing in front of the mirror, practicing the words she meant to say, but now felt the rush of uncertainty creeping back. When Roger entered, his demeanor was relaxed, almost disarming. He gestured for her to sit before he settled into his own chair, placing a tablet face down on the desk between them. "Maya," he began, his voice smooth but not overly familiar. "I wanted to talk about the presentation. There's a lot to unpack, and not all of it was straightforward." His tone remained neutral but distant, each word meticulously measured. Yet beneath this veneer of professionalism, Maya sensed skepticism lurking, ready to pounce. "I appreciate your feedback, Roger. I'd like to understand your concerns," she replied, keeping her voice steady, forcing confidence into her stance. "The data you presented, some of it appears to disrupt the current initiatives we've been working on. Have you considered the implications?" His eyes narrowed slightly as he leaned forward, driving home his point. Maya's pulse quickened, but she steeled herself. This was not just a conversation about numbers, it was a test of who she was becoming. "I did consider that actually," she said, summoning the courage of her previous interactions. "But sometimes the most effective strategies require us to confront uncomfortable truths."
The results don't align with our expectations, and it's essential we address them. Her voice gained strength with each word as she recalled Clara's encouragement. She watched as Roger's expression shifted, a flicker of realization passing over his features. But his hesitation was palpable, a reminder of the weight of her position, and she knew she must continue. Our work has the potential to impact so many lives. We owe it to ourselves, and to those we serve, to pursue the truth, no matter how challenging. Roger nodded slowly, the tension in the air thickening. "While I admire your passion, I worry about potential backlash from senior management. Some may view your call for change as defiance rather than innovation." "Do you think pursuing integrity could ever be seen as defiance?" Maya challenged, her heart racing at her own boldness. "This isn't about individual positioning. It's about creating a more effective pathway for the future of our projects. I'm not afraid of accountability, Roger. For too long, we've silenced our inner voices. This is about more than numbers. This is personal." She felt her truth resonating, and for a moment, she thought she saw a hint of respect flicker in Roger's eyes. But doubt lingered. Was she really being heard? Would she be dismissed again? "Let's see where we can capitalize on this," Roger finally replied, a more measured tone settling over him. "We'll need to present your findings in a way that leads to constructive dialogue. But Maya, you must also prepare for pushback." His words hung in the air, and a sudden sense of clarity washed over her. This wasn't merely about the research. It was about establishing her identity in a landscape that often sought to tranquilize ambition. She didn't just want to speak. She wanted to influence now, to rewrite her narrative. As they wrapped up the meeting, Maya realized that stepping into her authenticity held more weight than she had initially anticipated. She was not merely presenting findings. She was reclaiming her voice and space. Leaving Roger's office, she felt a surge of empowerment. Yet an underlying current of apprehension remained. How would her colleagues react as she pushed for these new directions? What would be revealed about her own capabilities and fears? The next chapters of her journey loomed ahead, unfolding mysteries yet to be discovered. With every ounce of resolve, she knew she was just beginning to reclaim her narrative and influence the conversation in powerful ways. But what lay ahead would test every layer of her transformation. Would the world accept her voice, or would it shatter the very essence of her evolution? The echoes of that meeting lingered in her mind, urging her on toward the turbulence she now recognized as part of her growth. Maya stepped out of Roger's office, adrenaline still coursing through her veins.
Her surroundings blurred momentarily, the crisp lines of the office walls and the hum of chatter from her colleagues merging into a singular sound, white noise. The confrontation had ignited something within her. Every belief she held about her potential was now laid bare, and she felt the weight of uncertainty pressing down. As she walked back to her desk, her mind raced. How could Roger grasp the urgency of her findings, yet remain concerned about the reaction from above? It was a dilemma that gnawed at her resolve. Was advocating for integrity truly worth the risk of being branded a troublemaker? The thin line between ambition and recklessness was starting to fray at the edges. Yet she felt compelled to tread that fragile boundary, because if not now, when? Sitting down, Maya couldn't shake the feeling that today was pivotal. She needed a plan. The pressure to ensure her data sparked a genuine discussion rather than fear was immense, but there was also an opportunity nestled within it. To sway her colleagues, she would need to prepare not only for questions about the data, but also for their potentially defensive reactions. If she could manage that, she could be the catalyst for change she so aches to instigate. Instinctively, she began drafting her approach. How could she frame the presentation to foster collaboration instead of resistance? A collective mind might view her findings as a chance to innovate together, rather than a challenge to the status quo. It had to become a dialogue, and Maya would need to empower her peers to voice their concerns too. This was no longer just about her. It was about creating an atmosphere where honest conversation could thrive. With her heart racing, she opened her laptop to gather her materials, her fingers gliding across the keys as ideas poured out. She even went so far as to set up a casual gathering, an informal lunch meeting with her team, where they could discuss her findings in a relaxed environment. Trust could breed opportunities far better than stiff presentations. The strategy evolved with each paragraph she typed, untangling her fears and hopes into an action plan. But deep within, self-doubt clawed at her. What if her colleagues dismissed her as just another voice? What if they were unable to look past their assumptions? The thought brought her to a halt, and she gazed out the window, trying to ground herself in the reality of her situation. In that moment, she caught sight of Clara making her way toward her desk, a warm smile on her face. As her friend approached, Maya experienced a flicker of reassurance. Clara represented a counterbalance to her fears, someone who believed in her ferocity and would rally behind her in pursuit of their collective vision. They exchanged a nod, and in that exchange, a silent commitment passed between them. Clara's upcoming support would be pivotal. Maya was no longer in this battle alone. "Hey, how did it go with Roger?" Clara inquired as she settled into the seat next to Maya. Maya hesitated, weighing her words carefully. "I laid it all out," she started, the excitement creeping back. "But there's still a lot of work ahead. I want us to prepare a strong front for our presentation." Clara leaned in, fully attentive. "What do you need from me?" The simple question rekindled the fire blazing within Maya. In that moment, she understood that support was essential to her transformation. It was one thing to stand up for her ideas. It was another to galvanize a network of allies around her. As they dove into the details of the plan, Maya felt a shift. Every step forward began to knit together threads of courage and integrity. This was only the beginning of her ascent. She was growing, not just as a professional, but as an advocate for herself and others. The stakes were high, but each determination strengthened her resolve. An hour later, Maya leaned back and observed the firestorm she had kindled with Clara. It seemed daunting, the looming uncertainties ahead. But was that fear a sign of weakness, or was it merely a byproduct of confronting an evolving self? Was she truly equipped for what was to come? The day felt electric. Each conversation, each realization sparking new insights. As she gathered her notes and prepared to face the full engagement of her team, she knew this was a watershed moment.
The upcoming lunch meeting would not only set the tone for her findings, but also define her role as a leader in the midst of potential turbulence. Yet the very thought of her colleagues' reactions stirred a new wave of anxiety. Would they receive her message with open minds, or would they reject it out of hand? Maya took a deep breath as she stood up to join Clara in the communal area, ready to face the daunting task before her. There was still so much at stake. What awaited them could change everything, both in the meeting and within herself. The urgency to discover whether her recalibrated strategy would galvanize her team pressed closely behind her. Would she find unity among her peers, or would the gulf of difference deepen, challenging her resolve and purpose? Maya entered the communal area, the bustling noise of chatter enveloping her like a warm blanket, but it did little to quell the turmoil in her mind. Clara stayed close, her presence a steady anchor amidst the rising tide of uncertainty. As they approached the seating area, a knot formed in Maya's stomach. Was it fear, excitement, or a mixture of both? She scanned the room. Colleagues were scattered around tables, some engaged in animated discussions, others solitary in their thoughts. Would they welcome her findings, or would the sense of challenge set the stage for defensiveness? She forced herself to focus on the setup of the room rather than the apprehension clawing at the edges of her consciousness. With a quick glance at Clara, who looked unfazed, Maya took a deep breath, commanding her anxiety to retreat.
"Let's get started," she said, her voice steady despite the tremor beneath. Clara nodded, and they began arranging chairs and setting up a makeshift presentation area. Maya flicked through her notes one last time, mentally rehearsing the key points she wanted to stress. This wasn't just a meeting. It was her chance to shape her identity as a leader, to be seen and heard. But rather than seeing this as a spotlight, she envisioned it as a platform for collaboration. She could never advance if she only presented her ideas as absolutes. Instead, she needed to invite dialogue, to encourage her colleagues to explore their own interpretations of the data. "Okay," she said, glancing around as a few team members began to gather. "Let's focus on creating a conversation. Each of us brings something valuable to the table." As people settled in, Maya's heart raced. She launched into her findings, employing the strategies she'd prepared, using a friendly tone to explain the implications without overwhelming them with jargon. Each word was selected with care, designed to provoke thought rather than dismay. She emphasized collaboration, framing her findings as opportunities rather than criticisms of established protocols. "Maya, that's interesting," interrupted one of her colleagues, Alan, who had an uncanny ability to resemble a turtle in his shell, shy but occasionally perky. "But aren't we risking a lot? What if our managers don't approve?" The question landed like a weight in the air, and Maya seized the moment to lean into the discomfort. "Risk is inherent in innovation, Alan," she replied, her voice calm yet firm. "By addressing the data now, we can shape our approach rather than let others dictate our path. It's time we stop fearing the consequences of speaking up." There were murmurs of agreement, but also skepticism. Maya felt the tension shift, uncertainty lingering but beginning to soften. Each response she received was a test of her conviction and a test of her ability to engage others in critical thinking. The discussion built upon itself, flowing organically as colleagues chimed in. Clara's insightful questions encouraged others to voice their perspectives, revealing underlying concerns that hadn't been articulated before. More than once, Maya was taken aback, surprised at how invested her colleagues became in the conversation. Their trepidation was gradually replaced with curiosity. Yet a lurking doubt nipped at her heels. Despite the momentary sparks of engagement, would this be an exception, or had she truly unlocked a pathway for continued discussions? A sudden thought flashed through her mind. This was not an isolated battle. It could be the start of something much larger if she cultivated it carefully. As the meeting progressed, she could feel the threads of her leadership weaving tighter. She had prompted dialogue, and with each response, she found confidence in her capabilities, her vision crystallizing.
The tension she felt earlier began transforming into something more exhilarating: resolve. But just as she wrapped up the meeting, a heavy weight descended upon her as she heard the familiar tone of Roger's footsteps approaching. Each step echoed loudly in her thoughts, a physical reminder of the circumstance and potential pushback she had felt earlier. His face was unreadable, a mask of professionalism that sent a chill through her newfound confidence. Would he view the meeting's success as a betrayal of the norms he'd tried to uphold? The moment of confrontation had arrived. How she handled this could redefine everything: her path, her worth, and her perception among her peers. Maya stared at the door, welcoming the imminent collision of ideals that could either solidify her stance or unravel everything she had just built. She took a deep breath, emotions swirling within her, conscious of the stark contrast between her burgeoning leadership and the shadow of doubt that loomed closer than she anticipated. The time had come to face the repercussions of her bold quest for change. Would Roger validate her efforts or expose her vulnerabilities? Maya tightened her grip on the podium, sensing the energy shift in the room as Roger stepped forward. The collective breath of her colleagues felt thick, pregnant with anticipation and dread. She fought the urge to retreat into herself, to hide from the storm threatening to break. His eyes scanned the room, landing in her direction, and Maya instinctively felt as though he could peel back her layers with that penetrating gaze. Though she had fought for a moment of understanding, she realized that his approach had the potential to reset the entire dynamic. "Interesting discussion," Roger began, his voice steady and level, but an edge surfaced as he continued. "But have we replaced one challenge with another? Risking management's approval isn't just a leap of faith, it's a crucial aspect we can't overlook." Maya felt her heart racing, a tightening in her chest, as her earlier confidence danced perilously close to the edge of doubt again. This was not merely about the findings or innovation, it was about her belief in leadership and its implications for her colleagues. Should she muster a defense or acknowledge his concerns to foster a sense of unity? Taking a deep breath, she chose the latter. "You're absolutely right, Roger," she said, gauging the reaction of her peers. "But isn't the essence of leadership to take calculated risks, to periodically challenge the status quo? If we don't advocate for change, we risk stagnation." A ripple of murmurs and nods bounced around the room, and Maya caught Clara's supportive gaze, grounding her. The clarity of her intention strengthened her resolve. This was for her colleagues as much as for herself. Roger's expression faltered for a fraction of a second before reverting to a poker face.
It's easy to romanticize the idea of change, but it's our responsibility to be cautious, he said, the weight of his words hanging heavily. Change requires buy-in from above, even if we believe it's for the best. Maya's pulse quickened, not from fear, but from conviction. The insistence on managerial approval felt like an anchor, weighing down the very ideas she had tried to lift into the light. Did he truly believe that leadership was merely about seeking permission? Yet, she pressed on, how often have we witnessed ideas sidelined simply because they didn't align with existing structures? Shouldn't our goal be to create an environment where innovation thrives organically? When we fear backlash more than we value progress, we undermine our potential. Her tone was firm, yet she remained open, inviting a dialogue rather than a duel. She noticed the shift. The softening faces in the audience now seemed more engaged. It was as if she had ignited a spark, pushing the boundaries of their comfort. The conversation began to cradle itself in collaboration. Colleagues began weighing in with comments about their shared experiences navigating Roger's cautious approach, weaving together the threads of doubt and conviction into a more robust fabric of insight. Encouragement replaced apprehension. Yet, amidst her emerging sense of solidarity, a whisper of doubt still lurked in the corners of her mind. What if this willingness to engage contradicted Roger's approach long-term? How much of what she was building was really sustainable among personalities set in their ways? When a colleague spoke up, inquiring about the next steps and how to present this data to management, my stomach churned slightly. She wasn't sure what direction this newfound energy might take, what kind of risk it might involve for her personally. Could she influence others enough for them to join her in this pursuit forward? The conversation shifted toward actionable ideas, aspirations creating a palpable excitement. Confidence surged, awakening a strong sense of purpose within her. But just as she began to feel the elation of possible change, Roger's voice cut back through the room. Though discussions like this are valuable, we must still remember who holds accountability when innovations fail. Maya's heart sank slightly, yet she realized the underlying challenge. If she was to guide these discussions away from fear and toward empowerment, she needed to confront Roger when the moment came again. She would need to articulate her vision for success strongly, allowing the possibility to emerge with clarity and conviction, but not without risk. In the midst of growing determination, she sensed the burden of leadership growing heavier, a constant reminder that she would need to rally her allies, define boundaries, and firmly stand her ground in the face of traditional expectations.
As the meeting began to draw to a close, Maya understood that confrontation was inevitable, not only with Roger, but with her own fears and assumptions. She had opened a door, but whether the team would walk through together remained uncertain. Stepping forward was an act of bravery, but thoughts of the shadows Roger cast lingered. The crucial moment awaited. Would she navigate the treacherous waters ahead, or would she sink under the weight of that looming dread? Maya knew one thing was certain. The true test of her growth lay just around the corner. Maya left the meeting room, her mind a whirlpool of thoughts. The encounter with Roger had nudged at something deeper within her, a growing awareness of her own potential and the scope of her boundaries as a leader. As she walked through the empty corridor, the fluorescent lights above flickered, mirroring the uncertainty she felt coursing through her veins. She was at a crossroads, not just in her professional journey, but also in her understanding of herself as a leader. In her mind, visions of innovation melded with the harsh reminder of Roger's skepticism. What mattered more, seeking approval or pursuit of progress?
With each step toward her office, she contemplated the delicate balance required to navigate corporate hierarchies while advocating for change. Could she push against the tide without risking her standing? She reached her desk and looked at the pile of documents. The enthusiasm of her colleagues still resonated. She could almost hear Clara's reassuring words echoing in her head. They were willing to engage, to explore. Change was in the air, waiting for a voice to amplify its call. With renewed purpose, Maya opened her laptop and began drafting an action plan to present to management, blending the perspectives her peers had shared. But with every keystroke, an uncomfortable question gnawed at her. What if she was fighting an uphill battle? The ingrained conservatism in their organizational culture could crush any budding innovation. Frustration surged within her. It was time to strategize more than ever. She needed a plan that not only highlighted the potential benefits of their ideas, but also addressed the inevitable objections that Roger would raise. Her phone buzzed, interrupting her thoughts. It was a text from Clara. "Let's talk after hours. I think we need to prep for the next meeting." Maya could sense Clara's anticipation through the screen, and it invigorated her spirit. The collaborative energy she had felt earlier could evolve into something transformative if they combined forces. Promptly, Maya replied, arranging to meet at a nearby cafe that evening. That meeting was more than just a discussion. It would be a refuge where their ideas could blossom away from prying eyes, a space free from the pressures of Roger's scrutiny. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with hues of orange and purple, Maya felt an inexplicable thrill along with her unease.
What if she could harness this collective energy? What if, together, they crafted a presentation so compelling that it would demand attention? Arriving at the cafe, she spotted Clara at a corner table, deep in thought. Sitting down, Maya noticed her friend's frown, a reflection of the same doubt that had crossed her mind earlier. "We need to talk about Roger," Clara started, casting a quick glance around as though he might magically appear. It was an awkward but necessary acknowledgement. Maya took a breath, poised for potentially difficult conversations about trust and vulnerability. They had a shared mission, but motivations lay buried beneath the surface, waiting to be unearthed. Would they be able to address their own fears and the risk of yet another dismissal? With the cafe buzzing around them, conversations thick in the air, Maya felt the weight of uncertainty slipping away as their exchange ignited something within her. They began sketching out their ideas on napkins, each suggestion sparking another layer of possibility. The initial hesitation was melting, replaced by shared determination to confront the fears that Roger and the status quo represented. But the exhilaration of their collaboration was underpinned by a growing tension. What would happen when they finally faced management? Would their zeal be met with open arms or insurmountable resistance? Maya still felt the shadows of doubt creeping in. This was not merely about getting things right. It was about embracing the very essence of her leadership identity. She would not bend to the weight of expectations that sought to dim her light. As they discussed and planned, a simmering fire ignited within her, strength blossoming from the promise of shared vision. As the cafe's lights dimmed and the evening drew to a close, Maya couldn't shake the itch of confrontation. The moment of truth loomed closer, a reckoning both for herself and Roger. The stakes were growing, and with them, her resolve firmed. Maya realized to truly lead was to be prepared to challenge and redefine boundaries, not just for herself, but for those willing to follow. Turning back to Clara, she voiced the unspoken. "We need to go beyond just this discussion. It's time to bring our voices to the forefront, even if it means ruffling some feathers." Clara nodded, eyes bright with that same burgeoning excitement, and Maya felt a sense of camaraderie rush between them. What they were on the verge of was more than just a presentation. It was an evolution of leadership, a revolution in their mindset. And as they prepared to leave, the flicker of uncertainty returned, gentle yet persistent. What if they failed? But deep down, she knew the answer. The true failure would be to remain silent. The time had come for an unyielding declaration, challenging the very notion of leadership itself. Little did they know the forthcoming meeting would demand every ounce of courage they had, and perhaps finally bring to light the hidden depths of Maya's resolve. Maya stood at her desk, a quiet storm of determination brewing within her. Yesterday's meeting with Roger had felt like a trial by fire, yet it had only served to galvanize her resolve. She had tasted the momentum born from challenging the status quo, and now she was ready to seize her moment. The time for action was now. As she prepared to present her data to upper management, she sensed she was no longer merely a cog in the machine. She was a force, one that intended to disrupt the complacency that had long pervaded the firm. She quickly gathered her notes, her mind flashing back to her grandmother,
the powerful attorney who had stood defiantly against adversity, leaving an indelible mark on the world. That legacy coursed through her veins, infusing her with courage. Clara walked in, her face glowing with excitement. "Today's the day, Maya. You've got this," she exclaimed. Maya appreciated her friend's unwavering support. It solidified her resolve. Together, they had forged a plan, one predicated not merely on presenting data, but igniting a genuine dialogue about change. When the time finally came to address the partners, Maya stepped into the conference room with confidence radiating from her every pore. Gone were the insecurities that once plagued her. This was her opportunity to redefine her role and solidify her place within the firm. "Thank you all for coming," Maya began, her voice strong and steady. She could feel the weight of the room's attention pressing on her, but instead of shrinking away, she embraced it. "Today, I want to share insights that not only challenge our current strategies, but open pathways to growth and success." As she began her presentation, she seamlessly highlighted data points while integrating narratives of previous women in law who had navigated similar waters. Each statistic bled into a story, her own story of perseverance and ambition. She could see heads nodding, expressions shifting from skepticism to intrigue, and it fueled her resolve to push forward. Maya concluded her presentation with a call to action, urging her peers to collaborate on innovative solutions that safeguarded their collective future. As she paused for breath, the air hung thick with anticipation. But then, with deliberate slowness, Roger raised his hand. A flicker of apprehension flared up within her, yet she stood firm. "Interesting points, Maya, but aren't we risking much? Bold ideas often require buy-in from above," he said, a subtle challenge hanging in his tone. Maya squared her shoulders, determination flooding her. "Absolutely, Roger, but isn't it our responsibility to advocate for our clients, no matter what risks it incurs? Leadership is not merely about following the established order, it's about paving a new one," she responded, her conviction echoing in her words.
The murmurs of agreement swelled around the room, and she felt the shift in air. This was what she had fought for, the space to innovate rather than conform. "It seems we have a lot to discuss," Clara chimed in, her support amplifying the positivity in the room. And just like that, Maya realized it was no longer just about her. This was a collective awakening, a realization that they could redefine their trajectory together. As conversations unfolded and people began offering their insights and ideas, doubt slipped away like fog retreating before the sun. By the time the meeting concluded, Maya found herself flushed with exhilaration. She had not only spearheaded lively discourse, but had transformed apprehension into collaboration, earning recognition among her colleagues. That day marked a turning point. Maya had not only stepped up, she had solidified her place as a leader in the firm, commanding respect from those who had once overlooked her. The echoes of her grandmother's spirit reverberated within her as she recognized her capacity to drive change. She could wrestle back the narrative and advocate for herself and others. Walking back to her desk, she felt lighter than she had in years, buoyed by a sense of accomplishment that simmered just below the surface. It wasn't only about proving her competence anymore. It was about embracing her truth and stepping into her legacy, one she was carving out for herself. That night, as she prepared for the panel discussion she had already confirmed, she felt the gravity of what lay ahead, but did not waver. She was ready, not just to share her story, but to inspire a movement. Maya had transformed from someone who felt invisible to a confident leader claiming her space. Each decision had been a stepping stone toward reclaiming her narrative, one filled with empowerment and integrity. She had not only conquered her fears, but had also earned recognition among her peers, an achievement that filled her with pride. As the days turned into weeks, Maya found her voice echoing in the hallways of the firm, igniting discussions and pushing for initiatives that celebrated diversity and innovation. Her journey was far from over, but as she looked ahead, she felt a deep sense of purpose. Each step she took reaffirmed her commitment to be a trailblazer, someone who would continue to uplift those around her, just as her grandmother had done. Maya's story was now intertwined with a legacy, not only of her past, but one that inspired countless others. She had emerged as a leader, ready to embrace the challenges ahead. The world was her stage now, and she was more than prepared to perform. Make sure you subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that illuminate paths of personal transformation and growth. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm Your support makes all the difference in keeping these stories alive.
Comment down below your reactions and theories about the journey of Maya. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. True fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions. Step into the light and help others find their paths too.